But this was like old movies. The silent theater haunted with black and white ghosts, silvery mouths opening to let moonlight smoke out. Gestures made in silence so hushed you could hear the wind fizz the hair on your cheeks. An excerpt from Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. Hello once again, I'm Don Jackson. This hour, what gets whispered in the dark? Sub Rosa, Under the Rose, with the heartbeat of the internet. Sir Thomas Browne wrote, "When we desire to confine our words, we commonly say they are spoken under the rose." End quote. This is one definition of sub rosa from one edition of Bartlett's. It means in strict confidence. The origin of the phrase is obscure, but the story is that Cupid gave Hippocrates, the god of silence, a rose to bribe him not to betray the amours of Venus. Hence, the flower became the emblem of silence and was sculptured on the ceilings of banquet rooms to remind the guests that what was spoken sub vino was not to be repeated sub divo. Robert James Waller wrote, "I remember everything. How you smelled, how you tasted like the summer, the feel of your skin against mine, and the sound of your whispers as I loved you." What gets whispered in the dark for no other ear save one? Sub rosa, in secret kept, in silence sealed. Prince, I warn you, under the rose, time is the thief you cannot banish. Phyllis McGinley in Ballad of Lost Objects. In the 14th edition of Bartlett's, there is an editor's note that delves into a little more detail about this thing we call sub rosa. This phrase, meaning secretly, is of unknown origin. With the ancients, the rose was emblematic of secrecy, and when a host hung a rose above his tables, his guests understood that all words spoken under it were to remain secret. Later, roses were carved as decorations on the ceilings of council chambers and confessionals with the same significance. End quote. Isn't it ironic that the rose came to symbolize secrecy? And yet, in the unspoken language of flowers, the rose spoke so clearly of love that its message, plain and simple, was there for all to see. This is an excerpt from a special section dealing with secrets in the August 1989 issue of Taxi magazine, and I quote, "Consider the allure of a secret, the shiver of excitement, curiosity, even apprehension evoked by a mystery. Whether dark, haunting ideas or small, private thoughts, secrets compel. They touch the imagination, forge bonds between confidants, confirm the essentially private nature of our lives. Having a secret is like holding a treasure." It's said that a secret is no longer a secret once it's been confided. But like the tree falling in the forest, does a secret exist if there's no one to hear it? Secrets exist to be shared carefully and, of course, confidentially." End quote. These are just some of the secret thoughts that get whispered sub rosa between lovers. In secret kept, in silence sealed. So, the origin of the phrase sub rosa was secrecy. When a host hung a rose above a table, his guests knew that everything said around that table would be held in the strictest confidence. There is one place that modern lovers subconsciously know that they can reveal their innermost longings, desires, and doubts without fear that anything whispered there in private will be repeated outside that place. I remember an article that appeared in the November 1982 issue of Glamour magazine by Louis Greenwood. It dealt with the haunting that took place in the last apartment he shared with his wife after she had packed and left. Even though she was physically gone, there were so many reminders left behind that he felt she was still there. He finally came to the realization that he too must leave this place of shared memories, partly because of something he found over the bed they shared for so long. Here's a brief excerpt. "It was a morning not long after our divorce had become final, and the realization came when I looked up from my bed at one of those objects we had unpacked and so carefully placed more than 3 years before. On the beam that crossed the room above the bed were the lacy remnants of my ex-wife's bridal bouquet. She had set it there when we'd moved in, but after a few days we'd become so accustomed to the disposition of the apartment that even though we slept under those dried flowers on so many nights, we hardly ever noticed them again." End quote. I've often wondered, after reading that piece, if she had secretly known about the ancient rite of sub rosa. On some level, she must have been aware that their quiet whisperings in that bed had been uttered under a faded rose. Intimate secrets revealed without ever having to worry about disclosure, because the bouquet, no matter how withered or even forgotten, sealed their lips. I guess we'll never know. Besides, it's really none of our business. But how many couples do you know who have carefully placed dried flowers in that one room of the house? I know quite a few. Carl Sandburg told us of the need for a secret place when he wrote, "There must be a place, a room and a sanctuary set apart for silence, for shadows and roses." Phyllis Rose penned an article for the May 1990 issue of Self magazine about diaries. In it she writes, "Japanese court ladies of the 10th century kept journals to record intrigues or complain about their husband's neglect. English women in the 17th century kept them to explore their spiritual health. American women chronicled their experiences as they sailed from the old world to the new, crossed the continent by wagon train, settled new land, and struggled to get a foothold in unfamiliar circumstances. Most of these early diaries are laconic recordings of births, deaths, weddings, quilting bees, and house cleanings, often begun as letter journals to keep in touch with loved ones left behind. We think of the diary as secret, but these early diaries were public documents, and the women who kept them served as historians for their families and communities. Since the late 19th century, women have written diaries as records and tools of personal growth, and in doing so have turned the diary into the great female literary form. There is no more gripping narrative of adolescence than Anne Frank's The Diary of a Young Girl. No more beautiful and detailed account of creative life than The Diary of Virginia Woolf. No more extensive record of narcissism than the diary of Anais Nin. End quote. From that last diary comes this secret. Anxiety is love's greatest killer. It makes others feel as you might when a drowning man holds on to you. You want to save him, but you know he will strangle you with panic. End quote. John Sedgwick, writing in the May 1990 issue of GQ, wrote, "To my way of thinking, secrets give life depth." By definition, secrets lie below the surface of things, out of sight, holding out the promise that there is more to the world than meets the eye. Secrets are a tease, a come-on. They are the body inside the silk dress, the thoughts behind the sultry glance. It's horrible to contemplate a world without them. George Orwell did that and came up with 1984. John Sedgwick, in this GQ article, goes on to say, "Sex is secret, and secrets themselves, or at least the transmission of them, are vaguely sexual. In telling a secret, one speaks in a lover's hushed voice. Especially if the secret is deep and personal, revealing it can make one feel weightless and dizzy, a plunging sensation like falling in love. Afterward, the twosome often feels newly intimate, as though they'd just made love. The learning of secrets is a seducer's art." As the unscrupulous John Malkovich character in the movie Dangerous Liaisons demonstrates, it takes little beyond the expression of loving interest to worm out a confidence. Truman Capote was one of the better secret gatherers of our time. According to Gerald Clark's biography, Capote could get just about anyone to tell him just about anything. Sedgwick goes on to say, Clark was a friend of Capote's, and he himself had told Capote things he'd never want repeated. He was so seductive, Clark says, no one could resist. To be sure, Capote's technique was simple horse trading. He'd tell a secret about himself, thereby obliging his partner to respond in kind. You'd feel cold and unfeeling otherwise, says Clark, but Capote also cultivated the air of the loyal friend. He created an atmosphere in which you wanted to tell him things. He'd look at you very intently with his intense blue eyes, and you just couldn't disappoint him. What is so unusual about Capote is the great secret finders usually maintain reputations as secret keepers. But Capote blew all that with the calamitous publication of Le Cote Basque, 1965, a portion of his long-awaited, never-finished novel, Answered Prayers, in which Capote, through thinly veiled characterizations, spilled everything about many of his closest friends, who proceeded to shun him unmercifully. Clark recalls trying to talk Truman out of publishing the piece one afternoon at Gloria Vanderbilt's pool. He told Capote that all his friends were sure to recognize themselves and be furious. Nah, Truman replied, they're too dumb. But once revealed, secrets have a way of finding the place where they'll do the most harm. The friends learned quickly. In her book, Dreams of Love and Fateful Encounters, The Power of Romantic Passion, Dr. Ethel S. Person writes, and I quote, "Insofar as the we constitutes a world unto itself, its boundaries are marked by secrets. If feelings, perceptions, or insights are unshared or unspoken, they lose their significance. Likewise, if they are shared indiscriminately. The creation of mutual secrets and confession of past ones signify the importance not only of the secret's content, but of the lover's bond as well. Secrets are rooted in intimacy, trust, and commitment. However trivial they may appear to be, confidences play a vital role in our psychic lives, perhaps reversing that childhood ignominy when we were excluded from our parents' conversations. The shared secrets between lovers comprise more than the exchanged confidences of past skeletons. They are made up of private jokes and the knowledge of sexual preferences, hidden antipathies, and concealed ambitions. For lovers to betray one another's secrets is a major transgression, and some loves have been shattered upon the discovery of such a betrayal. For some lovers, not even sexual infidelity rankles so much as the disclosure of one's sexual idiosyncrasies or hidden fears to a third party. Furthermore, lovers expect the sacred trust engendered by shared secrets to be respected even if love ends." End quote. Because, as Charlotte Bronte wrote in Evening Solace, "The human heart has hidden treasures, in secret kept, in silence sealed." Good night, sweet dreams. I'm Don Jackson.